Hello, I'm joined today by Peter Dooley. Peter Dooley is a community activist well known in Dublin Bay South and well known around the country for calling for peace in a time of war in Europe. Peter has organised with some other colleagues a demonstration at the Spire in Dublin at 1 p.m. this coming Saturday, the 25th of February, and he's hoping that he'll get a reasonable crowd out there to call for peace and to advocate for Ireland not joining NATO and not integrating into an EU army. Thanks for joining us today, Peter.
Thanks very much, Finbar.
Peter, you have a demonstration coming up now on Saturday. What has motivated you to get involved in campaigning for neutrality and peace in this day and age?
Well, it's actually Cowboy Stop the War campaign. It's a group of activists that came together about 8 or 9 months ago in Dublin because we saw the escalation in this conflict in Ukraine. We saw the dehumanizing impacts of the war. We saw the impacts of sanctions on Europe and on Ireland in particular. And we just decided to stand up and try and build a united movement for peace in Ireland that would stand for the interests of ordinary working class people.
But isn't there, if you switch on Irish media, it's very much encouraging the victory of Ukraine and the continuation of this war until there's some kind of Ukrainian victory, whatever that's supposed to look like. You're really swimming against the tide when it comes to this. It's a major challenge for any grouping or organization to take on. In terms of your reaction thus far, what kind of reaction are you getting?
We're getting a good response. We've done a number of demonstrations and we've got very good response off people. But I think you're right. I think we're up against the sort of soft power of the media, and the main narrative and propaganda that's being pushed at people is that one side is right and one side is wrong. It's a lot more complex than that. This war has been going on since 2014. There's been huge destruction and loss of life in the Donbass region since 2014. Over 14,000 people killed. And then the escalation occurred last year where with the start of the special military operation by Vladimir Putin. But again, as we've always said, which has caused unimaginable grief to people, huge loss of life, huge displacement of people. And it's just shocking that it should continue. And if for the premise of ordinary people, wars never served and will never serve the interests of ordinary people. So we need to stand up for peace, and especially in the context of the Irish involvement, we should be standing for our neutrality and standing up to be strong in that demand. And unfortunately, the Irish government haven't been. They've eroded our neutrality through a succession of moves towards PESCO, towards EU battle groups, and now stronger incursions and calls to move towards NATO. This is really unthinkable for a country, for instance, that had a long and proud record of being neutral and standing up for peace, because we've never colonized anybody. Ireland have a strong history of standing up for oppressed people and stand up for working class people. And we should be standing with working class people across the world, whether in Russia, Ukraine, and in Ireland, obviously in particular. And that's why we're deciding to make a stand for peace.
We're recording this on the 21st of February 2023, and it was in a number of front page headlines this morning in some of the mainstream media newspapers that the Irish government were considering committing a certain amount of troops to Ukraine for different purposes and extending the agreements and the purpose and functions that they have already. What's your reaction to that?
I just think it's despicable. I think the Irish government in particular are trying to erode even our triple lock, where we need a new UN Security Council resolution before it goes to Oireachtas to draw our soldiers into war. And now they're trying to move in towards these battle groups and even through these sort of defence agreements in the European Union. I think it's absolutely despicable. It's just a slow march towards eroding our neutrality and moving towards this bigger militaristic union, which we should have no hand act or part in. Because, as I said, we've a proud history of neutrality in Ireland. We've a proud history of standing up for oppressed people around the world. And in particular, to move towards militarization, I think it's wrong. And it shows Ireland has really progressed in over 100 years. When you consider John Redmond over 100 years ago was advocating for people to be sent off to the battlefronts of Somme and be butchered in imperialist wars that never served the interests of ordinary Irish working class people and never served the interests of anybody. And now we're doing the same again, where it's going to be ordinary people are going to be sent off to fight in these wars and put themselves in harm's danger For what? For what end? You know, you have got to ask the question: to what end is this for?
One of when you look at what's happening in Ukraine at the moment and the extent to which the Ukrainian regime at the moment and its backers, its NATO backers in particular, the extent that they're willing to push things and refuse to negotiate, refuse peace deals, things like this, the escalation level, it's impossible to guess where this is going. And although things that we might have thought ludicrous a few months ago are becoming realities now, if it was a case that we were to join a military pact like NATO or further integrate into the EU military, as what's being aspired to by some of our politicians, if that was the case, is there a danger, you think, that we could see an all-out Third World War in which young Irish people are being conscripted and are being used as the descriptions in Bakhmut and other parts of Ukraine at the moment are of being sent into a meat grinder? There is that real danger. And do the Irish people realize the escalation level that we've reached so far? When you're talking to people, just regular people in your community, because I know you're a very community oriented people, do you think people really get a sense of what a dangerous level we have raised, or the word has raised the bar to?
I don't think so. I think a lot of people, so a number of people do, but very many people in society are going about their business and they're thinking like, well, how's this impacting Ireland? It's a huge, huge impact on Ireland in terms of, as I said, driving more people in toward this militaristic union. And like, you know, when you think about it, we're on the verge of a possible nuclear exchange. This is unthinkable. This is the closest we've ever come towards a nuclear exchange, where we have totally unhinged people in these powers of control in huge, huge countries such as the United States. We see them in Europe as well, the cowardly leaders in the European Union who are just basically bowing down to what the Americans are telling them what to do by prolonging this war. And then we consider the context of the Minsk agreements, which were never followed through on, which were reneged upon by the European leaders, the French and German leaders who brokered those deals. And then you consider what's happened subsequently with the Seymour Hersh's revelations around the explosions on the Nord Stream. This is remarkable that nobody has enough people have essentially been made fully aware and realizing what devastating impact it's having on us here locally in Ireland. We've seen it through the sanctions hammering small businesses, hammering ordinary people across the country in terms of higher energy costs. And who's benefiting from this? You got to ask the question, what end is this for? And as I said from the outset, it benefits the very rich in society. It benefits the big corporations, and it essentially asks a deeper question of Irish sovereignty, I would argue, and in terms of where we stand in international relations. You know, I think we should stand on the basis of peace, stand up for neutrality, obviously, as well, but ask a deeper question of why has this been driven by forces that are totally outside the control and remit of most ordinary people. So it really asks fundamentally as well a question of real democracy. I think people should be asking that question because it's vitally important that it's addressed appropriately.
20 years ago, there was a president of a country called Iraq that was demonized in the media. We were told he was like Hitler, etc. Just like Putin has been spoken about now, though I don't think there are similar characters in many ways. Saddam Hussein. And yet, even though he was demonized, there was still a massive anti-war movement developed to stop the war on Iraq. What has happened in the last 20 years that, and all greatest respect to yourself and the other individuals and small groups that are trying to do something and trying to raise the voice of sanity and peace and neutrality. But what has happened, do you think, in the last 20 years that here we have a situation where in Ireland and the UK, there is literally, other than yourselves, no mass anti-war movement, and the people who you normally expect to help build an anti-war movement, and we weren't looking at nuclear war with Saddam Hussein, but we are now. What has happened in 20 years, do you think?
That's very disappointing. You know, I think over the last few years, I think there's been a huge push by political parties to follow the mainstream narrative, and I think there's a lot of pressure coming on. The sort of soft power of the media forcing the agenda, and then the political parties are following it. And like a lot of political parties are just interested in both, and they find that going against sort of the mainstream narrative would be fine, would be quite difficult. We saw that during the last couple of years in terms of COVID, where we saw the biggest transfer of wealth from the poorest to the billionaires in society, and we saw huge, huge restrictions on people's lives. Now, in particular, now what we're seeing now is more of the same. It's like, they're trying to simplify the argument and make Putin out to be some sort of devil figure, which is absolutely just, it's very simplistic narrative. Like, we doesn't go into the nuances of the whole conflict and the real reasons behind it. And probably a bigger agenda that's going on in terms of the increase towards militarization, and then the push towards the regime change in Russia. And this is the agenda of what the Americans, I would argue, are looking for, and hence NATO as well. And there's all the questions about NATO expansionism as well. But it's disappointing. But like, that's why people need to come together and force change. And it's only through people power movement from below that will force real change in society. So to be reliant on other people to do it for you isn't an option. So we need to take control ourselves and actually realise the power we have ourselves. And even if we start small, we're going to develop it and get bigger and bigger, hopefully over time, and bring more people on board. And more people will see the common sense solutions to this. And as I said, war doesn't offer anything for ordinary working class people. It just offers death, destruction, misery, poverty, and many more issues, while the rich essentially in society get richer and hold on to their power, which is going to bring us through this cycle for maybe future generations. But as I said, it's now urgent in terms of nuclear, two nuclear powers at us. Like, essentially, we could all be gone if this could escalate any further, because it's just unthinkable. I didn't even see it going this far with F-16 fighter jets and so forth. Like, who knows where it's going to end? But it's absolutely just horrific, and the plug should be pulled in it by ordinary people really around Europe and in Ireland, and that's what we're trying to build.
Yeah, and there's also attempts to create a war situation, it would appear, with China over Taiwan. There is an opportunity to try to begin, as you say, the process of creating a people's movement to at least express our disgust that in the 21st century we are still warring with each other and these things are still going on. So there is an opportunity to object to that. You don't have to take sides. You just have to object to war and where this could lead and demand it to stop. And the opportunity to do that is next Saturday at 1 p.m. at the Spire. What have you got lined up for that, Peter?
Yeah, we have a number of speakers. We're going to have hopefully a very good event for more and more people coming to it. Hopefully, I'll be calling on everybody, the general public, essentially, to come out. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak on them Compass, Finbar, and keep up your good work as well. But it's important that you get the message out to more and more people to come along. It's only going to be an hour out of your day, so you should come along and stand with like-minded people. And I'd urge people as well to try and get involved, to make their own placards and come along and feel part of it, and make whatever placard you deem is appropriate, such as stop the war or whatever you think, or with any sort of drawing or whatever. I'd urge people to come along and feel part of it, because it's our protest for ordinary people. It's not anybody else's. It's not any other agenda behind it. The only agenda is to stand up for peace, stand up for the interest of ordinary people. So I urge any ordinary person who's interested in peace and anti-war, please come along and bring your placards and bring your whatever you want to bring with you, and make a day that's going to be bright, and it's going to put pressure, obviously, on the political establishment to start listening to people, because there's a big silent majority of people out there that have serious concerns as to what's happening in Ireland. There's a lot of economic issues happening here, such as the cost of living crisis, because of the sanctions on Russia. We have a huge issue in terms of refugee crisis in Ireland. Easy solutions to all these is come out and demand peace, then we can actually work on getting a proper society based on the needs of people going forward on issues around sovereignty, and these sort of issues I think are vitally important. But come on next Saturday, I urge everybody to bring their placards and make it bright and as colourful as possible to really make it noticeable to this government to start listening to the people and start standing up for the interest of putting the interest of our neutrality first and foremost, and that's what we should stand for.
And it's also maybe to re-emphasize the fact that there is a terrible vision of the future in 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years time of children of this island and our grandchildren being conscripted into a military situation with a world at real war that's escalated with Russia, that's escalated with China, and this isn't even just about the here and now and the sanctions and things like that. There's also that real terrible vision of a terrible, horrific future if people don't start standing up. And the opportunity, I think, is to do that on Saturday. And I think I would like to thank you and anybody involved in trying to do this, because I know you're putting your head above the parapet. You're up against the odds when it comes to the media and the political climate in this country at the moment. And it's a brave thing to do. Compass Media will be there on Saturday. We will cover it. I can't promise that we'll go live, but we will cover the event, and we will try to record any speeches that are happening. So, Peter, thanks for that. And hopefully we'll have a few words with you on Saturday as well.
You're more than welcome. Thanks, Finbar, and keep up the good work. And big shout out to Compass Media. So we urge people to share their posts far and wide as well as possible, because it's great to have independent media and independent voices out there. Keep up the good work.
Thanks for that, Peter. We'll chat to you soon.
Take care. Thanks, Finbar.